Opportunity. That simple word could sum up the essence of Money in the Bank in WWE. Yes, it has taken mid-carders to the main event level. Underdogs become icons. A simple briefcase suspended high above the ring, mayhem and metal all around it, and it holds the power to disrupt the established order in the blink of an eye. Since its debut in 2005, the Money in the Bank ladder match has become more than just a spectacle. It has grown into one of WWE's most powerful storytelling tools and has transformed the careers of multiple wrestlers into overnight sensations. Edge, CM Punk, Rob Van Dam, The Miz, Seth Rollins, Big E, and many more all became main event stars because of this. So let's dive deep into how Money in the Bank became more than just a gimmick match, how it transformed WWE's overall storytelling and turned a simple briefcase into the most dangerous weapon in all of professional wrestling. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin Kellum, and why don't you cash in? You see, because of the money. Yeah, cash in with your take on what should happen with Money in the Bank in the future. Let us know your favorite Money in the Bank cash-in moments in the comments as well. And subscribe to Sportskeeda Wrestling and get us to 200,000 subscribers. It was 2005. It was the road to WrestleMania. An animalistic Batista had won the Royal Rumble and was ready to challenge his former stablemate and mentor, Triple H, for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 21. On the other hand, another upstart, John Cena, was the #1 contender for JBL's WWE Championship at the Show of Shows over on the SmackDown brand. Randy Orton would seek to dance with The Undertaker, while Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels were promised to have a dream match. These left a lot of marquee matches with something else missing on the grandest stage of them all. A number of superstars were left floating in creative limbo with no major storyline to give them a spotlight or showcase at WrestleMania. In an interview with ESPN, Chris Jericho said, "It was one of those years where there was nothing really going on for a lot of us, which is kind of a drag. There was a few ideas thrown around. One of them was a three-way submission match between me, Edge, and Chris Benoit. That's lame. Submission matches are hard to begin with. It's a three-way submission match, and Edge didn't really have a submission. And then Kane didn't have anything to do either. Shelton Benjamin didn't have anything going on. Same for Christian. Just a lot of fairly big-name guys that didn't really have much to do." So Jericho and Brian Gerwitz, who was the head writer of WWE at the time, came up with an idea, a multi-man ladder match where the winner would get a title opportunity. Jericho's idea was for the winner to get the title shot the next night on Raw, but Gewirtz added a very strong twist. What if the winner could cash in that title opportunity anytime within a full year of winning it? Bryan pitched the idea to Vince McMahon, and he loved it. The only thing he insisted on was putting the contract on a briefcase, and boom, the concept was born. On March 7th, 2005, on an episode of Monday Night Raw, the general manager, Eazy-E Eric Bischoff, introduced the concept of the match to fans. 6 wrestlers were announced for the first edition of the match: Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Edge, Christian, Shelton Benjamin, and Kane. The WWE fanbase was stunned. The latter had been a staple in WWE for years at this point, but this felt different. For years, the multi-man ladder matches were showcased in WWE, especially during the tag team division of the early 2000s. In fact, 2 participants, Edge and Christian, were pioneers of those matches. But now, 6 individuals would battle not for titles, but for a single briefcase that promised future gold. It was fresh, it was unpredictable, it had stakes and consequences, uncharted territory, and of course, a very big playground for some very athletic people to do some amazing things on the biggest show of the year. At WrestleMania 21 in Hollywood, we had the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match. Talking about favorites, Shelton Benjamin was probably the favorite to win the whole thing, and he was gaining a lot of popularity and momentum at the time as a rising star. Jericho, with his experience, was also considered as a possible winner for the match. The WWE went with the right choice, who became the face of Money in the Bank over the next few years, the rated R superstar. Yes, this would make him the real ultimate opportunist. and he needed something to launch him into the spotlight, and Money in the Bank and its contract was exactly that. Edge didn't just win the match, he became the symbol of what Money in the Bank could become. Overall, the match proved very successful on the first outing and earned 4.5 stars from the Wrestling Observer newsletter and gained an average rating of 8.9 out of 10 from CageMatch.net. The match was truly brutal. All 6 men pushed the boundaries and the crowd was in the palm of their hands. Edge won the match in villainous fashion when he smashed Chris Benoit with a chair while he was about to unhook the briefcase. Now, Edge was Mr. Money in the Bank, and carrying the briefcase was new to him and new to fans. We knew it meant an anywhere, anytime title shot, but how would that be presented? How would this be something truly special? And how were we going to be really aware of it within the persona that Edge had as a heel? Well, we're not here to talk exactly about the road to it, but when it happened, it was significant. And here's the most fascinating part. We've never seen it before. It was new and it had a consequence. We didn't know what a cash-in exactly would be when it appeared. There was no rule book. There was no past to study on. The mystery, the element of it, turned it into a ticking time bomb. And then we got to the night of New Year's Revolution 2006. WWE Champion valiantly defending the honor of WWE, John Cena found himself inside the Elimination Chamber, a massive steel structure, as he smashed along and outlasted Carlito, Chris Masters, Shawn Michaels, Kane, and Kurt Angle, and held the title in a brutal, bloody mess at the end of it. But this night was not over. Cena may have still been the champion after the Chamber, but that's when Mr. McMahon came out and announced this night is not over, and that Edge would be cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase right then and there on a very depleted John Cena. This was shocking. No one could have imagined that's how it was going to be done the first time. There's a first time for everything. This was a hell of a way to do it. Edge came out and speared Cena twice to win the WWE Championship for the first time in his career in shocking fashion. However, the story behind the cash-in is a little bit more interesting. Edge, being a heel, pitched the idea to Vince McMahon. The idea was to cash in the contract when the champion is down and out, and it would get him extra heel heat in the title switch. Edge didn't just want to win the title, he wanted to make the process of it controversial and memorable. The cash-in was a game changer for WWE, and it was a game changer for Edge. He would drop the championship back to Cena a few months later, but now he was a main event player, and in the future would also win the championship even more. This is when he truly earned the nickname the Ultimate Opportunist. Just like that, WrestleMania 22 rolled around in 2006, and it was time for a second edition of the Money in the Bank ladder match, proving that it was so successful that it was now going to become an annual tradition at the show of shows. This time, Shelton Benjamin was going to be the gold standard, along with the muscle of Bobby Lashley, the extremeness of RVD, Matt Hardy, Finlay, and Ric Flair competing in the match in Chicago. I saw this one live, and it was amazing. Ric Flair in his 50s competed in a ladder match and took an insane bump in this match, by the way. Lashley and RVD were the favorites running into it, and huge fan reactions followed them to the ring. It ended with RVD, who walked out with the briefcase just as WWE was rebooting the ECW brand. How convenient, but it made total sense. However, unlike Edge, Rob Van Dam, a fan favorite, took a different approach. He wanted the fans to rally behind him, and he went straight to the WWE Champion John Cena, announcing that he would cash in his contract at ECW's One Night Stand event. WWE had rebranded ECW around this time, and RVD being the poster boy of the brand before in its original incarnation, it all made sense. On June 11th, 2006, ECW One Night Stand in New York City put John Cena, the franchise player of WWE, against the face of hardcore wrestling, RVD, in a huge match. It was special. The ECW crowd showed no love to Cena and were very hostile towards him. Even that classic "If John Cena wins, we riot" sign still holds a place in our minds. During the match, Edge interfered and speared Cena, allowing RVD to deliver a 5-star frog splash and pin him. winning the title. Ironically, it was Paul Heyman, the man who was the mastermind behind ECW, who counted the 3. It gave it a different dimension in a Money in the Bank contract win. 2 matches, 2 winners, both had never held the WWE or World title before. Both were seen as mid-carders, but were now leveling up with Money in the Bank. And yet, these Money in the Bank victories flipped the script on their careers entirely, propelling them to the mountaintop. Now, Money in the Bank matches have become an annual event at WrestleMania, heading into WrestleMania 23 in Detroit. This was won by Mr. Kennedy, who was making a lot of waves in WWE as a tough talker who was quite cocky as a mid-card heel. He had feuded with The Undertaker and had showcased that he could hold his spot as a major player, so giving him the contract with that momentum made total sense. However, before Mr. Kennedy could cash in, he tore his tricep and was going to be out for a reported 8 to 9 months rehabbing the injury. WWE couldn't afford to have the Money in the Bank briefcase, still a new concept, disappear from television for that long. Though they could do that, and he could simply just have it. The whole appeal of the contract was its looming presence, a constant reminder to fans that a title match could happen anywhere at any time, so not having it on TV just didn't make sense. WWE made the call to take the briefcase off him, and who better to give it to than someone who had already mastered it, Edge. Yeah, the rated R superstar was once again an opportunist. Edge challenged Kennedy for the contract and won it, holding the briefcase for a second time in his career. Up until this time, Edge was already a decorated superstar who had won the WWE Championship multiple times, multiple accolades to his name, and a deeply personal, career-defining feud with one John Cena. But what he did next with the Money in the Bank briefcase elevated both his legacy and the prestige of the contract itself. Just days later, Edge cashed in on a battered, vulnerable Undertaker, who defended his World Heavyweight Championship against Batista in a grueling steel cage match and a beat-down Mark Henry. It was a brilliant move and a testament to how memorable moments with Money in the Bank cash-ins can be. Then the next 2 years were dominated by CM Punk. The voice of the voiceless, the Second City Saint, was one of the surging superstars in WWE. So putting the briefcase on him 2 years in a row showed that WWE wanted to do a whole lot with him. He cashed in his contract on none other than Edge, someone who had done it to other people, fashion, flipping the script on the ultimate opportunist. He was gaining massive fan support. The timing couldn't have been better. People were behind Punk as an out-of-the-box WWE superstar at the time. And since Edge was a top heel, fans were more willing to see someone they weren't expecting get the title from him. And it worked. However, even with the title around his waist, he didn't quite feel like a true world champion, and maybe WWE didn't really present him as one. He was holding the gold on a roster with stacked names like Batista, John Cena, Randy Orton, Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho. We can go on and on and on. Punk had the potential to be right there with them, but WWE's creative vision didn't exactly back that up, and he was booked as a weak champion, someone who actually lost the title outside of a match. He was attacked by Randy Orton and had to vacate the belt. But by 2009, things were different. Punk had won the Money in the Bank contract as a babyface, but he cashed it in as a heel. This was the first time that someone would use the briefcase to flip their character and turn on the fans. He did so on a vulnerable, depleted Jeff Hardy, like a heel would do, who was at the peak of his career at the time. Around this time, no one was getting cheered louder by casual and diehard fans than Jeff Hardy. The crowd adored him, and anyone standing across from him instantly drew heat, even someone like CM Punk. Punk screwed Hardy by cashing his contract on him and winning the World Heavyweight Championship for a second time, and turned heel in the process. This time he was ready for the championship, and his heel persona gave him one of the best feuds of the year with Jeff Hardy. They had some phenomenal matches. The feud allowed Punk to fully showcase his range as a performer, proving he was a great wrestler, a compelling storyteller, and could be a captivating storyteller on the microphone as well. On the 5th anniversary of the Money in the Bank ladder match taking place at WrestleMania 26 in 2010, the match had become a staple for career-defining moments. This year, it would feature 10 wrestlers. Yeah, that's a lot of people and a lot of ladders. It was won by former collegiate wrestling star Jack Swagger, an odd choice for sure. He was someone that no one saw coming, and it surprised a lot of people. Just days later on SmackDown, Swagger cashed in his contract on a worn-down Chris Jericho to win the World Heavyweight Championship. Another surprising one. There was no build-up, no real anticipation. It felt abrupt, but that's kind of the idea of the Money in the Bank briefcase. You could be critical of it, but the logic is all there. Swagger, though, didn't feel like he was leveling up with this world title around his waist. He came off as a conniving champion who needed shortcuts and never truly looked dominant like he should have. Wrestlers winning championships from Money in the Bank as a cash-in booked as cowardly heels wasn't a new thing. Yes, I know that's doublespeak, but that was the perception. WWE effectively did this with Edge and Punk, but not so much with Swagger. It was like he didn't belong in the main event, but he was there because he found some shortcut to it, which is what the Money in the Bank is. He eventually dropped the title to the valiant fan favorite Rey Mysterio, and just like that, he slipped right back down to the mid-card, almost like the title reign never happened. Many fans viewed it as one of the first big missteps with Money in the Bank. This was the same year that WWE decided to make a big decision, turning the Money in the Bank itself into its own annual pay-per-view event. In July of 2010, the inaugural Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place, featuring not one, but two high-stakes ladder matches. One for the World Championship on SmackDown, and one for the WWE Championship on Raw. Having two contracts meant two different championships looked like a good idea on paper, but it was a bit more confusing and maybe overdone. Kane won the contract for SmackDown, cashing it in on the same night on World Heavyweight Champion Rey Mysterio, becoming the first man to cash in the contract on the exact same night. It was for the first time that the Big Red Machine won the World Championship, making it a truly special moment for him. On the other hand, The Miz won the contract for Raw and turned out to be a perfect pairing. He was cowardly, opportunistic, and very personable, had the riz for the biz, and the briefcase was going to fit him like a glove to elevate him to the next level in a believable way. WWE booked him smartly. Even though he didn't win every match, he was consistently featured alongside top-tier talent, giving him the rub of a main eventer in the making. Miz carried the briefcase with a lot of swagger for the rest of 2010. That's a lot of TV time to lurk around as a looming threat. Then, in a perfectly timed moment, he cashed in on a battered, depleted Randy Orton and won the WWE Championship, heading into 2011 as the face of Raw. It was a big deal at the time. Miz was still seen as that reality star guy who was not a real wrestler, even though he was, and he didn't belong to be there. He didn't deserve it, but he deserved it. With this, Miz defended the championship successfully against John Cena, thanks to The Rock interfering, and Miz came out of it with a concussion, so that's a different story for a different time. The point is, it made Miz into a top-tier talent. Even though he didn't find the same level of success after losing the title, he was one of the success stories of Money in the Bank. It leveled him up, irrefutably. In 2010, there were three different Money in the Bank contract holders: Jack Swagger, Kane, and The Miz. All three successfully cashed in. It was a landmark year for the concept. There was no Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania, as WWE already introduced the standalone pay-per-view. In 2011, Alberto Del Rio, yes, the El Presidente of WWE, won the Raw contract and became an integral part of the Summer of Punk storyline with CM Punk by cashing in at SummerSlam, while Daniel Bryan, a valiant hero, won the SmackDown contract in an outstanding Money in the Bank ladder match, maybe one of the best in a few years at that point. Bryan winning it was an interesting choice, as he didn't look like someone who would be a typical world champion in a heavyweight-driven WWE, but still WWE gave him the briefcase, and he made the most of it. He cashed in on a vulnerable Big Show who had just won the World Heavyweight Championship and walked out champion. That's right, he also turned heel and did it in a great way. The momentum he gained from that run ultimately set the stage for the Yes Movement years later and the triumphant underdog victory at WrestleMania 30, maybe one of the best WrestleMania endings of all time. In 2012, WWE went another interesting route with the Money in the Bank contract. It was won by the man who's here to show the world. Sorry about that. Dolph Ziggler. He won it on the SmackDown side, but then John Cena won it on Raw. It was an interesting way to make a guy who had already been world champion win the briefcase to put himself back into the world title hunt. However, Cena became the first one to fail to cash in. It happened on Raw's 1000th episode, where ahead of time he said he would face WWE's conniving champion of the time, CM Punk. He had already announced it in advance, and maybe that was a little bit too much of a babyface move. He faced a fully fit CM Punk and was close to beating him, but the Big Show interfered and cost him not just the match, but also the contract. It was a moment that showcased that winning Money in the Bank contracts don't exactly guarantee a championship victory. Meanwhile, on the other side, in 2012, the Money in the Bank winner Dolph Ziggler delivered one of the most iconic cash-ins of all time. It happened on the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania 29, a moment that fans were eagerly waiting. Yes, despite being a heel, Ziggler had his own online cult following, and the crowd absolutely went electric, especially when it's a real hardcore fan base that shows up for WrestleMania weekends. He won the World Heavyweight Championship from Del Rio in a monumental moment, in a kind of mini-match that was still competitive. Like The Miz, he didn't reach the same level of success, but that moment was certainly something special, and certainly one of the biggest of Dolph Ziggler's career. In 2013, the briefcase was won by Sandow from SmackDown and Randy Orton. Once again, a mid-carder gets elevated and a former world champion gets back into the hunt. Orton successfully cashed in on a prone, vulnerable, and cheated on Daniel Bryan just after he won the WWE Championship from Cena, starting the entire Authority storyline. Yeah, that was a shocking and disappointing ending. On the other hand, WWE didn't want John Cena to be the only superstar who failed with a Money in the Bank cash-in, so another name was added to that unfortunate list. Sandow. Yes, the man who demanded your silence was not making any noise, and in a twist of irony, Sandow's failed cash-in was against Cena himself. By 2014, WWE had unified the WWE and World Heavyweight Championships, and there was only need for one Money in the Bank winner. Seth Rollins, who had just turned on the Shield, won the contract, gaining all the momentum. Leaving the biggest faction of the time, he was the perfect guy to hold the briefcase. His new alignment with the authority of Triple H in that faction only showcased his potential as a future chosen champion. Holding the briefcase felt like an extension of his character, who was always setting something up for his own benefit at the expense of others. When Rollins finally cashed in his Money in the Bank contract, it changed the way we expect these cash-ins to go forever. It happened during the biggest match of the year, the main event of WrestleMania 31, as Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns were tearing each other apart for the unified WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Just when it looked like either man could win, Rollins sprinted down to the ring. With an entire stadium of people trying to catch their breath, he cashed in mid-match, turning a singles match into a triple threat. Up until that point, no one had ever cashed in an ongoing match, and it was an unprecedented move to do it in the main event of WrestleMania. It was absolutely crazy. The crowd lost their mind. The tension was spiked. Rollins seized the moment, pinning Reigns, his former Shield brethren, to win the title and escape with what was dubbed the heist of the century. It is still the most dramatic and probably best Money in the Bank cash-in we've seen just yet. Rollins was more than just a visionary in his wrestling character. Apparently, he was a visionary backstage as he pitched the idea of cashing in at WrestleMania, and it made him truly iconic. The next briefcase was won by Sheamus, who then calculatedly used it on Roman Reigns. Yes, with graffiti all over the ring, him having a big victory, you know the deal. The heel takes it away from the babyface who never sees it coming. In 2016, the contract was captured by Dean Ambrose, who cashed it in just moments after Seth won the championship from Roman Reigns on the same night, winning the championship for the first time. It was an interesting night as all three members of the Shield held the WWE Championship on the same night. In 2017, WWE introduced the Women's Money in the Bank match. The first time the women would have this opportunity, it was won by James Ellsworth. Yeah, Carmella's ringside stooge. He won it and unhooked the briefcase and handed it to Carmella, which drew criticism. What? Yeah. Looking at the backlash, WWE decided to do the match again on the upcoming episode of SmackDown, which was the right idea, and this time Carmella won her own briefcase and went on to cash it in on Charlotte nearly a year later. On the other hand, Baron Corbin won the men's Money in the Bank match, and he wasn't successful in cashing in due to John Cena's distraction. Another involvement of Cena in a failed cash-in. I see a pattern here. WWE continued to book the Money in the Bank ladder matches as a special thing. Some worked out well for wrestlers. Some got wasted, like Braun Strowman in 2018, who was an unstoppable force at the time and had all of the potential to be a main event monster. And he had failed to cash in against Roman Reigns at Hell in a Cell, and with that he lost the chance to become a top-level talent. He did win the Universal Championship, but, the luster wasn't there the same way. Yeah, from here, WWE's booking of the men's Money in the Bank contract started to take a strange turn. In 2019, Brock Lesnar shocked the world by winning the contract. A bizarre decision because the Beast wasn't really advertised for the match where the Money in the Bank was being competed for. However, he had some entertaining moments with it, and he converted the briefcase into his own boombox for some reason, and eventually used it to beat Seth Rollins for the Universal title. In 2020, Otis, of all people, won the briefcase, and he won it in a very, very odd circumstance that was the pandemic times. The Money in the Bank was competed for in a wild rat race match all throughout the WWE headquarters, with the ladder and the ring being at the top of the building. It was a very unique circumstance, probably the most unique presentation of the Money in the Bank match. Asuka would also win the women's Money in the Bank briefcase. Money in the Bank has been that tool to push someone to the next level, someone who has the potential to be something bigger than they were before. Big E went up a whole other level in 2021 when he became Money in the Bank winner and was able to use it to cash in on WWE champion Bobby Lashley during that very odd transitional time back to fans. In 2022, again, a controversial decision was made when WWE decided to give it to Austin Theory. The guy that Vince McMahon had dubbed the next big thing in WWE was getting it at an odd time, as in the future, he wouldn't really be a part of WWE. And the Austin Theory project wouldn't sustain that momentum moving forward, as he would use the contract to cash in not on the undisputed WWE Universal Champion. He used it on the United States Champion held by Seth Rollins at the same time, and he failed. So he went for the lesser title, and the optics of him losing it meant he couldn't even be a mid-card champion, and he had a damaged credibility from the whole thing. It's kind of obvious, right? Damian Priest won the contract in 2023 and used it at WrestleMania 40 in a big way. The second time the contract was used to cash in at Mania against Drew McIntyre, who had just won it minutes before. Drew finally getting his world title win in front of fans, despite it being a predictable move. It was brilliant and gave room for Drew McIntyre to really get into a blood feud with CM Punk, who was on commentary at the time and was still working his way out of an injury, and it allowed Damian Priest to become a world champion. Talking about Drew, he won the briefcase in 2024, but lost it the same night, again, thanks to CM Punk. On the other hand, the women's Money in the Bank matches have evolved, giving great moments and, as we mean in the process, elevating other people. Beyond Carmella's first win, the briefcase has brought up names like Alexa Bliss, Bayley, Asuka, Nikki ASH, Liv Morgan, Io Sky, and most recently, Tiffany Stratton, who have all captured it and used it to shift the trajectory of their careers. We've yet to see a failed cash-in on the women's side of things. Money in the Bank has always been a tool to push someone to the next level. I mentioned leveling up. Someone who has the potential to become the next big thing, finally getting an opportunity to quickly do that without having to build to it over months and months. But over the years, WWE has always used it to experiment and swerve the audience, which is also interesting, especially when you have so much content coming out every single week. In recent years, they've also maybe miscalculated it, like destroying the entire long-term build with some stars and giving it to Brock Lesnar out of nowhere. Oh wow, you watched that much of the video this far? Thank you so much. I want to give you a Money in the Bank briefcase, but I can't physically do that through this video. Hit the like button, get into the comments, let us know what you think should happen with Money in the Bank, and let me give you my crazy, outlandish idea right now for what should happen with the briefcase in the future if it's about giving someone that next big opportunity, finding that next big star to level up to the next level. It should be someone from NXT. have one of the bigger names from WWE's developmental brand NXT enter the multi-man, multi-lady wrestling ladder match and become an instant, credible threat with a rocket ship and a briefcase to leapfrog the established order, which is the idea, and become an established player themselves in the entire process. There's no denying that Money in the Bank has changed WWE forever. What started out as a concept for giving more wrestlers an opportunity on WrestleMania has become one of the most powerful annual storytelling tools that WWE has.